everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Adjustment meeting of Wednesday, May 17, 2023, and it is 6:45, and we will get the ball rolling. Will everyone please rise? I'm taking it out of turn now. As our newest member, Ms. Modestine, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Is right.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. And we have a roll call, please.
Okay. Chairwoman Rosalind Philippe,
Here.
Vice Chair Dearmaid,
Here.
Commissioner Shields,
Here.
Commissioner Pierre-Louis,
Here.
and Commissioner Modestine.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Mondesir is excused. We have a quorum.
Thank you. With that said, we'll do the announcement to the audience. And, Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a summary of the quasi-judicial procedures that are applicable to the items before the board today. These rules apply to applications on specific parcels of land, like zoning map amendments, special exceptions, variance, and conditional use requests. The board will sit like a court, hence the term quasi-judicial, reviewing the facts presented at the hearing, applying the adopted rules as explained by staff in the staff report and verbally. Board members can make site visits, but must disclose the evidence upon which they intend to rely from that visit. Board members will disclose at the beginning of the hearing whether they have had communications with individuals on behalf of the applicant or otherwise, including who the communication was with and what the topic of the discussion was. All persons intending to speak to the board will be sworn by the clerk. Staff will make a presentation, and the board may ask questions. The applicant will make a presentation, including expert witnesses, if any, and the board may ask questions. When the public hearing is open, the public can make comments on the application limited to 2 minutes each. Citizen testimony must be fact-based, not opinion. The board may ask questions, and the applicant's attorney, if any, may ask questions called cross-examination. Members of the public can decline to be cross-examined. The board deliberates based on the evidence presented. Board's decision must be based on competent, substantial evidence, meaning based on the record, staff presentations, expert presentations, and fact-based comments by citizens, according to the standards for approval set forth in the City Code. In the board may approve, deny, or continue the item. While staff previously read into the record emailed or mailed comments, we have concluded this is improper in quasi-judicial proceedings, as the person sending the comments is not sworn and there's no opportunity for cross-examination. Written comments submitted before the meeting are part of the record and available for review by the board. Lastly, we ask each of you to treat this proceeding with respect and proper decorum, no calling out, interrupting speakers, or disrupting the proceeding. Please give this proceeding the same dignity and respect as if you were in court. Disruptions are prohibited and enforceable pursuant to the City Code. Please also silence your cell phones. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that being said, we'll move on and administer the quasi-judicial oath for anyone who will be speaking on any of the item, whether it's for or against, and if you are the person who submitted, we're hearing your case tonight. Stand up and
Please raise your
Raise
right
your right
hand
hand.
and repeat after me. I solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. To tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
do swear.
You may be seated. Thank you.
Any amendments to the agenda? No? Communications we'll handle as we bring up the cases. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 18? I'm sorry, I skipped that. Moved by Mr. McDermott and
Second.
seconded by Mr. Shields. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed. And it's only because with conversation with our attorney, I can't abstain, so I'm gonna say no because I wasn't here.
Thank you, Ms. Modestine. All right, we'll move on with the continued petitions, only because we didn't meet last month. The first, three items, they're the same applicant. I guess Mr. Held will go ahead and take them together, but when we vote on them separately, correct?
Well, they're here for, it's for review. You can vote on them together, I
Okay.
think. I don't think it's.
All right, it's, thank you, SE-02-21, and that's nightclub special exception for Nouveau Cafe, 14135 Northwest 7th Avenue, and it's also variance -08-21, which is minimum distance, also at the same location, and V-09-21, hours during which sales are allowed, consumption variance for Nouveau Cafe. All right,
That's fine.
yes, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you. Welcoming all board members, new and familiar faces. These three items are continued petitions regarding the address at 14135 Northwest 7th Avenue. There's no staff presentation for these items as they're discussion items that were brought back before the board as per the conditions of their approval. When they were approved in January, board order dated 9th of February 2022, one of the conditions was that the applicant shall return to the Board of Adjustment in 6 months for review. So this was the condition the board placed on the approval at the time, so that you all had a chance to review the application in light of any findings or violations to make a decision. Staff has found no code violations on the property. However, having said that, the North Miami Police Department has provided correspondence, which has been provided to all of you, regarding any incidents that they have had on the property. And I have received correspondence from the administrative section of the police department that outlines that they have requested seven events wherein they requested police presence as security, which is one of the conditions of their approval, that they have 2 off-duty North Miami police officers required for operations after 11 p.m. So the intent of these items are to bring it up for discussion, to provide you with the facts that has happened over the last 6 months. It's more like a year now, but and for you to decide whether you want to continue this item, if you want to revoke the approvals, or stay the decision, in which case no action is required.
Madam Chair, may I ask 2 questions?
Yes, Mr. Held.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Yes. So, Cameron, is anybody here on behalf of the applicant?
So the applicant did not show up tonight to represent themselves. They were notified and they were contacted. However, they're not here tonight.
Okay, and is there a staff recommendation on what the board should do?
There's no staff recommendation for these 3 items.
Okay. Are you at all concerned about the continued operation of the establishment?
Based on the facts presented by the North Miami Police Department, they've only had 2 incidents in the course of the 12 months. It is important to note that in the course of 12 months, they've only had 7 requests to the North Miami Police Department for off-duty officers, which would imply that they've only had 7 events after 11 p.m. for the 2022 calendar year. I can't confirm or deny how many events they've had, but I want to point that out for the board so that they are aware. But based on the 2 incidents and 12 months of operation, no, staff is not of the opinion that they should be revoked.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. McDaniel.
I may be mistaken, but I recall that one of the things we talked about when we went through this proceeding originally was the very thing that I see here.
Is your
Yeah.
microphone on, sir?
Yeah, it is. It's on.
Okay.
Was the fact of leasing out to third parties events at this particular facility, which evidently they are doing.
So,
And
Mr.
it says
McDermott,
right here, the issue was that they are leases where renting businesses in order to host parties. Then it talks about two parties, one a form party, which had too many attendees, which was also an issue we discussed because of the parking at the time,
Yep,
okay?
I think Mr. Helt has something to
So,
say about it.
I was curious about that too, and I went through the conditions to see whether that was permitted. And
was.
with regard to the order approving variance with hours of sale of the alcoholic beverages, condition number 4 says during the nightclub's hours of operation or any special events, parties, celebrations, festivities, ceremonies, etc., which implies that I think the decision was that we would allow it, but the condition was no loitering, gathering, standing, waiting in vehicles, etc., shall be allowed at any time on the site. So we were trying to control the effect of it, but not prohibit them from.
Yeah, and I also remember, I'm sorry, that my discussion with the owner at the time is for him to understand that even if he leased it out to someone who wanted to host a party, that he understood that whatever happened at the premises would be his responsibility because this was his business.
However, I think the last line speaks exactly what we were afraid of at the last meeting. Otherwise, they attempted to hold parties without proper licensing. You know, this is one of the things we were afraid of what was gonna turn into. I mean, obviously, you know, we raised this issue, but obviously the police department is telling us that they have attempted to hold parties without proper licensing.
So so my question would be, what kind of licensing is required to hold a party at this establishment?
So for that comment, I would need further details from the police department, and that's why staff had no recommendation.
Well, possibly could be that they had parties that they were called to and didn't have officers on duty like they were supposed to, or perhaps the insurances weren't in place that were supposed to be in place, or perhaps these were unregistered companies, and just anybody walking off the street that wants to have a party, kind of thing. The fact that they're talking about a music event where there was an anticipated violent dispute with another group.
That didn't necessarily happen on site. That was a prior.
Well, we don't, no. It says, we received information from the Fusion Center that one of the music artists performing at the event was involved in a violent dispute with another group, and there was a potential for armed confrontation at the site.
Right. It didn't say that it happened there.
Well, it's pretty clear they wouldn't have mentioned it. It's pretty clear since they're referencing this
They're-
particular item.
I don't know that you can reach that conclusion with all due respect.
Well, maybe what we need to do is table this until we can get some clarifications from the police department on licensing and where these potential armed confrontations are happening. I mean, that would be my motion.
I
And-
hear what you're saying. Maybe we do need further information.
No
Because
question.
based on what the police is saying, they're bringing in terms that was not part of the original,
Approval.
approval or the case that was in front of us last year. So if the police is talking about proper licensing, this was not something that was part of it. So that might be a term for them. Maybe if we table it, then we might ask someone from the police department to come and clarify what it is that they're trying to convey. So,
Madam Chair.
otherwise,
So rather than table, I would use the word continue it
okay.
to the
Continue.
next meeting, and we would request that a representative of the applicant appear.
From the business as well as from the
Yes.
police department to be
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
That work for you, Mr. Khan?
Yes.
So do you need us to, on a
I would do a-
motion
Yes,
to
I would do a
continue?
motion.
Before the motion, can I ask a question to staff? What does the CU request or want to establish the business as? Is it a nightclub that
It-
would be allowed to lease normally? Is that something that
So
they
it's
can
not
do?
for this particular business, the leasing parameters are not explained or not included in the CU. It is for nightclub uses. I could go back and find out if we have additional notes internally in the system, but on their CU, it's just nightclub
And then if the code allows for them to
to
rent
operate.
it out or lease it out,
Exactly.
if you can clarify that for us too, please.
Okay.
So I need a motion to continue.
So move.
Second?
All right. Moved by Mr. McDermott and seconded by Ms. Modestine. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. A voicemail, voice vote was okay, Mr. Hell, right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then we'll move on. This should be nice. I could get to see the heat.
Oh, yeah. That will be nice.
Okay, next case, V-04-23, a variance to the required setback for a dock or pier in the R4 multifamily zoning district, 2179 Northeast 123rd Street. And, go ahead, Ms. Apollo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You'll come back. This item is a variance to Article 4, Division 2, Section 4-204F, and Article 5, Division 6, Section 5-602C of the LDRs for the reduction of setbacks for a dock or pier in the R4 multifamily district at 2179 Northeast 123rd Street. The applicant is requesting hardship relief from the setback requirements of the LDRs to install a dock that extends into the required side yards of the property on a lot occupied by an end townhouse unit. The LDRs do not permit encroachments into the side yard setbacks on townhouse lots pursuant to Section 4-204. The code reads, "No building or structure for end units shall be located closer than 15 feet to any side lot line." Further, Section 5-602 provides the length of any dock or pier measured parallel to the seawall or retaining wall shall not encroach into the required side yard setbacks. It is noted that in Section 5-602, the code anticipates or contemplates reduction to the setback by up to 20% accomplished through administrative variances. For providing the board background on this application, on September 23rd, 2022, the applicant submitted a building permit to install a dock and boat lift at the subject property along the rear property line stretching from both east to west lot lines. On October 11, 2022, the zoning division denied the permit due to the fact that the dock proposed was to encroach in the setback areas. The applicant is accordingly seeking a variance to deviate from the required side yard setback on a townhouse lot of 15 feet to 0 feet setback on both side lot lines and requires a Board of Adjustment approval. Providing the board with context of the site, the property is approximately 2,280 square feet in area, according to Miami-Dade property appraiser, and contains a two-story residential building, an end unit townhouse dwelling that is approximately 1,710 square feet and constructed in 1966. The property is a legally non-conforming end unit with a setback of approximately 10 feet to the east lot line, which is one of the lot lines in question tonight. Regarding the physical surrounding context, to the north of the property, there is the Little Arch Creek Canal and a single-family residence to the north of the canal in the R1 district. To the south is the C2BE commercial zone with retail, commercial, and restaurant uses. To the east and west are properties both within the R4 designation, or zoning designation, pardon me. To the east is a two-story residential condominium, and to the west is a townhouse dwelling that is attached to the property in question. On the screen, you're going to see the site plan for the property. We have on the top, the survey, and on the lower image is the proposed site plan. The area in the red box is the proposed dock that extends from one side lot line to another. Regarding variances, Section 3-606 requires that the BOA shall find that the applicant demonstrates compliance with 4 of the 6 criteria to grant approval. I will go through criteria 1 through 6. We found that 4 of the 6 criteria have been met. The first criteria, special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or buildings involved and which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same zoning district. Staff found that yes, the applicant or the application meets this condition in that the lot width of this property is 29 feet wide with a side yard setback of approximately 10 feet when the code requires 15 feet. The special condition is that the side setbacks exceed the width of the lot. 15 feet from either side of the property line exceeds the 29 width of the lot in itself. As such, the code does not permit any structures of any kind, including docks, within the setback area, and the site itself would not qualify for accessory structures with a width of 29 feet. Criteria number 2, the unusual circumstance or condition necessitating the variance requests are present in the neighborhood and are not unique to the property. Staff found that yes, the application meets this requirement in that the surrounding residential dwellings north of Northeast 123rd are primarily townhouse dwellings with narrow lots, narrow meaning 20 to 30 feet in width. And staff notes that the prevalent condition in this neighborhood is that townhouse lots have docks that extend from both east to west property lines or from both side lot lines. Criteria number 3, that the requested variance maintains the basic intent and purpose of the subject regulation, particularly as it affects the stability and appearance of the city. Staff found that yes, the application meets this request in that the basic intent and purpose of a setback is to protect the built environment of the city and of the neighborhood, and to ensure that one building does not infringe on another's building's right to sunlight, ventilation, and vehicular access. In this case, the requested variance is to permit an encroachment on portions of lands that are submerged and therefore does not particularly affect the stability and appearance of the city. Criteria number 4, pardon me, I should have adjusted the screen. Criteria number 4, the literal interpretation of the provisions of these LDRs would deprive the applicant the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of these LDRs. Again, staff found that yes, the application met this criteria in that the literal interpretation of the LDR specifically prevents end units from having accessory structures or structures of any kind within 15 feet of any lot line. The setbacks for the legal non-conforming property will not enjoy the same liberties as the other lots in the neighborhood, in that the other lots are mid-block units and they are permitted to have 0 feet setbacks to both lot lines. The 29 feet setback, the 15 feet setback requirement for a lot that is 29 feet in width in total would essentially prevent the applicant from erecting any structure on the property, whereas other properties in the same district can do so. Criteria number 5, the variance requested is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land, structure, or building. Staff found that no, that the lack of this variance to permit the dock does not hinder the reasonable use of the land. However, it is noted that with the existing narrow lot and the provisions of the code, section 4-204, no accessory structures can be erected if the code is implemented as read. Criteria number 6, the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of these LDRs, and such variance will not be injurious to the areas involved. Staff found that yes, this application meets this criteria in that the variance requested will allow the placement of a dock along the rear property line, extending from both side lot lines. The proposed dock location does not hinder the purpose of the regulation of a setback, in that the portions of land affected are submerged, and sunlight, ventilation, greenery, and vehicular accesses are not elements of concern, and accordingly is consistent with the location and other docks in the area within the neighborhood, the precedent of which does not pose a threat to the city at large. Accordingly, in light of these findings, staff recommends approval with conditions. The conditions being the first, that the applicant obtain all building permits and necessary licenses prior to the erection of the dock and boat lift. And second, that all other standards of the LDRs pertaining to the erecting of a dock and or boat lift shall apply. As of writing of the report, and as of today rather, no comments were received from the neighboring property owners within a 500-foot radius of the subject site. And the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Hill.
Just to make sure we comply with the requirement, are there any
Communications?
commission, board disclosures for ex parte communications? Okay, thank you.
Is the applicant present, Mr. Herrick? Okay. Please state name and address, please.
Hi, good evening, members of the board. Robert Rossi, contractor for Mr. Gene Herrick.
And does he have?
Yeah. There's a power of attorney in file.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Cameron about summed it up. I know you all want to get home. I can answer any questions. The project was approved by Durham. It's consistent with the other properties in the area. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. With that said, I'll open public hearing. Anyone here for or against the item? This is your opportunity to speak. Public hearing is closed. Board discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. McDermott and seconded by Mr. Shields. Roll call, please.
Point of clarification.
Uh-huh.
Move for approval with staff conditions.
Yes.
Always.
Oh, yeah,
Sure.
always.
Okay.
Always. We stand with our staff.
Yeah.
All right. Chairwoman Philippe,
Yes.
Vice Chair McDermott,
Yes.
Commissioner Shields,
Yes.
Commissioner Pierre-Louis,
Yes.
and Commissioner Monestein.
Yes.
Okay. The motion passes with a unanimous vote.
Thank you, members of the board. Thank you.
All right, me too.
All right. Moving right along. Our next item is V-06-23, variance to the required setback for a mixed-use development in the C3 Commercial Zoning District, 12315 Northeast 4th Avenue. Good, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you. Just bear with me. All right, so this item before us here is a variance to Article 4, Division 3, Section 4-306E, to the required setback for a mixed-use development in the C3 Commercial Zoning District, 12315 Northeast 4th Avenue. All right, the renderings are up on the screen for you to see of the proposed project. The applicant is requesting a hardship relief from Section 4-306E, Planned Corridor Overlay District, from herein we'll be calling that the PCD, of the LDRs, to develop a 4-story mixed-use building with a yoga space, live-work studio, live-work space, and 12 units on the property, the aforementioned property. The transition policies of the LDRs relative to the PCD require that all structures with a height of greater than 35 feet to be set 35 feet that are adjacent to existing single-family dwellings to be set back 25 feet from the adjacent property line. Adjacent to the subject site is to the east is an existing single-family dwelling at 433 Northeast 123rd Street. Accordingly, a setback of 25 feet is required to the east shared property line. With regards to context and background on the application, this application was submitted in August 29, 2022 as a conditional use permit, and it is still within the conditional use permit processing at the Planning Division. An earlier rendition of the 4-story multifamily building that forms the basis of this application was submitted at that time. The application was successfully processed and circulated, and on December 1st, 2022, the applicant was advised that the rear setback or the east setback of the property does not meet the requirements of the LDRs. In discussion with the Planning Division at the City of North Miami, it was found that that deviation of that nature could not be supported through the conditional use permit process and had to be done separately at the BOA level. So the applicant is therefore seeking a variance to deviate from the required transition setback required by the Planned Corridor District, also known as the PCD, for a lot adjacent to an existing single-family dwelling, to set back 10 feet from the shared property line where 25 feet is required. Accordingly, the deviation requires a Board of Adjustment approval. With regards to physical context, the property that exists on the property, the building that exists on the property today is an 8,100 square foot multifamily structure. It's 1 story in height and approximately 3,398 square feet constructed in 1965, according to Miami-Dade County Property Appraiser. The property is a legal non-conforming building with an existing rear setback of 7.48 feet to the east or rear property line. And I just want to pause here for a moment to describe the situation. The current building is set back 7.48 feet from the property line. The proposed building is set back 10 feet from the property line, but the code requires that due to the height of the new building, it be set back 25 feet from the property line. Just so, I know there's a lot of numbers going around, I want to help us all understand. Regarding the physical context of the area, we have properties to the north, east, and south, all within the PCD overlay, and I'll go through them. To the north, we have a single-family dwelling that is functioning as a multifamily, and staff has been provided with proof of that condition. It's also within the PCD overlay. To the south, we have a single-family dwelling, also functioning as a multifamily dwelling, also in the PCD overlay. To the east, we have two properties. We have one that is a residential apartment building, and you will see that on the screen. Directly to the right of the red box and up a block is an apartment building, and directly to the right and down a block, you'll see the single-family dwelling that's in question with regards to this variance. To the west of the property is a residential apartment building, and that apartment building is in the R6 zoning district outside of the PCD. The subject property is in an area characterized by a mix of low to high density built form as permitted by the C3 commercial zoning district and the PCD overlay. On the screen right now, you'll see the site plan for the property. Looking from above down, it just highlights both the side setbacks, the rear setback, and the front setback and driveway area. According to section 3-606, the applicant must demonstrate compliance with 4 of the 6 criteria to receive a recommendation for BOA approval. Staff has reviewed the application and found that they have met 3 of the 6 requirements of section 3-606, and I will go through them for you. Criteria number 1. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or buildings involved and which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the same zoning district. Staff found that no, the application doesn't meet this requirement in that there are no special conditions or circumstances which are peculiar and specific only to this property and not the properties around it. Criteria number 2, the unusual circumstance or condition necessitating the variance request are present in the neighborhood and are not unique to the property. Staff found that yes, the application meets this requirement in that the neighborhood wherein the property is located is characterized by a mix of land uses and intensities. It consists of irregular shaped lots that are not congruent one from another, resulting in properties that share a lot line with multiple properties. And I'll just explain that further in a bit. The figure on the screen depicts that not only are there irregular lot shapes and irregular lot lines, but there are also a mix of land uses that are directly adjacent one to another. The irregular lot lines create instances where multifamily developments that are existing today are set back less than 25 feet from the shared lot lines of single-family dwellings. On the screen, you'll see the figure that was also provided in the report. I'm going to go through it with everyone so we're on the same page. We have the yellow boxes represent existing single-family dwellings. The green boxes represent multifamily dwellings. The red boxes represent commercial buildings. And the blue lines represent lots that are irregular in nature that result in a lot line that is shared between more than 2 properties. And the example being if you look at the red box, that's the subject site. To the rear, or on the screen, to the right of the red box, you'll see there's 2 properties that share that same backyard with the subject property. Typically, this is not the case. A property typically shares a lot line with one other property, but in this neighborhood, there are many due to the lot irregularity, there are many lots that share multiple lot lines in an irregular pattern that results in situations where setbacks cannot be met and have not been met. Criteria number 3 is that the requested variance maintains the basic intent and purpose of the subject regulations, particularly as it affects the stability and appearance of the city. Staff found that the application does meet this requirement in that the basic intent and purpose of a setback are to protect the built environment and to ensure one building does not infringe on another building's right to sunlight, greenery, and vehicular access. With regards to the PCD, the added intent of the transition setback is to protect one property's right to privacy and to avoid overlook conditions. Overlook conditions are when one property can directly look over into another. In this case, the requested variance is to permit an encroachment of 15 feet in the transition setback area. So the requirement is 25 feet. The applicant is providing 10, therefore they're 15 feet short of the setback requirement. Picking up where I left off, so that requirement, the 15 feet encroachment, is applicable only for 50% of the rear property line. If you look at the image to the bottom right of the screen, you'll see the subject site is in gray and the rest of the properties are in black. There's a red circle in the middle of the screen. That is the only portion of the property line that is in question for the setback, because to the north of that red circle, or to just directly above it, is a multifamily property abutting a proposed multifamily property, and therefore the 25 feet does not apply. But for that portion of the circle, which is exactly 50% of the lot, of that lot line, that's shared with a single-family dwelling on the other side, and therefore the code requires 25 feet setback from that, for that portion of the lot line. So it's a bit irregular in it of itself. The applicant has noted that the separation distance between the proposed multifamily dwelling of this application and the existing single-family dwelling on that property, 433 Northeast 123rd, would be approximately 40 feet separation. So when you measure building tip to building tip, there's a 40 feet difference due to the horizontal nature of the lot configuration. The two images on the top of the screen, or on the top of your screen, are samples from the neighborhood as provided by the applicant, which depict the irregularity of this neighborhood in that you have existing multifamily buildings directly adjacent to single-family buildings with less than 25 feet setback. Criteria number 4. The literal interpretation of the provisions of these LDRs would deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of the LDRs. Staff found that the application did not meet this requirement, as a property can be developed without the implementation of the requested variance. Criteria number 5, the variance requested is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land, structure, or building. Again, staff found that the applicant did not meet this requirement in that the property is still developable and will not hinder the reasonable use of existing land, structures, or buildings. Lastly, criteria number 6, the granting of this variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of these LDRs, and such variance will not be injurious to the area involved. Sorry, put that on screen. And staff found that, yes, the applicant met this criteria in that the variance requested will allow a multifamily building in an area where multifamily buildings are contemplated by the LDRs and the comprehensive plan. The proposed setback does not hinder the underlying purpose of a setback in that it still provides access to sunlight, greenery, and vehicular access. And while it is closer than the required 25 feet as proposed in the code, the design of the structure itself with landscaping and buildings that don't encroach farther than the allowable amount will mitigate overlook conditions. Furthermore, it is the opinion of staff that this neighborhood particularly is in the transition from single family to higher densities, and staff finds that the requested variance does not deviate from the existing character of the neighborhood as depicted earlier on in the slides, that this condition exists with less setbacks in the neighborhood as the neighborhood is changing and becoming more dense as per the desire of the PCD overlay. The requested setback is consistent with what exists in the neighborhood and provides more, if not provides more than setback than what exists between the multifamily dwellings and single-family uses. When weighed against the mandate of meeting the comprehensive plan's target for providing additional housing, staff finds that this is a reasonable concession and does not pose a threat to the city nor a negative precedent for the city at large. With these findings, staff finds that the applicant satisfies 3 of the requirements and renders no recommendation to the board. Should the board move for an approval, staff has 2 conditions of approval. The first being that the applicant obtain the conditional use permit. Just to reiterate, they're already in the conditional use permitting process, but one of the conditions would be that they finish that process, attain all building permits and necessary licenses prior to construction, and that prior to the commencement of a rental building or completed building, the applicant must obtain a certificate of use and business tax receipt, as well as comply with each applicable LDR requirement by the city, county, state, and federal regulations. As of writing and as of this presentation, no comments were received from neighboring property owners within the 500 feet noticing radius. And that is the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Right. is the applicant. You may come forward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Federico Zapata. How are you?
And your address?
156 Northwest 89th Street, El Portal, Florida 33150.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything to Mr. Palmer's
He
presentation?
did a great presentation. I think he provided a lot of detail of what we are requesting and the building that we are proposing. We just want to kind of, our proposed development aims to revitalize the area and contribute to the overall growth and vibrancy of North Miami. The unique challenges we faced on the real setback requirements. The property configuration is such that abuts both a single-family dwelling and a multi-family dwelling. Enforcing the standard 25-foot setback will result in an L-shaped building that will negatively impact the viability and hindering the ability to contribute positively to the community. We firmly believe that our variance is both reasonable and necessary. The proposed setback of 10 feet is consistent with adjacent multifamily buildings, allows for a rectangular shaped building that maximizes the use of the available space while respecting the intent of the regulations. Granting this variance will uphold the city's intent and purpose by protecting the stability appearance of the area while encouraging urban revitalization. We seek to support in approving our variance request. By doing so, you will enable us to deliver a development that not only meets the community, the needs of the community, but also contributes positively to the overall fabric of North Miami. We appreciate the opportunity to present our vision for a vibrant and prosperous North Miami.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
I'd just like to offer a few comments. So page 3 of the applicant's report shows the surrounding buildings and the effect of the application of the 25-foot variance on the building. What's curious to me is that immediately adjacent to where the 25-foot setback would be applied, there is no single-family residence. Maybe there used to be, but there is none now. And it's the diagonally adjacent single-family residence that appears to trigger the setback requirement. And staff suggests that the neighborhood is in transition, so the more likely conclusion is that there will be less single-family residence and more multifamily residence. So it seems to me that one of the criteria about either the literal interpretation of these LDRs imposes, deprives the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed, or that special conditions exist that are different because there in fact is no existing single-family residence next to this proposed structure. When you see, and I don't know how many of you actually caught what would happen, because there's a multifamily building on the north side of
Right.
what they're calling Lot 8, the 10-foot setback applies, but because
And the
I
other
guess
side
at
it
one point
doesn't.
there was a single-family residence in the south half of the lot,
But
a
that's mul-
25-foot setback has to
But
apply.
that's multifamily now, right?
I don't think there's an existing structure there now.
Is there any, Cameron?
Let me bring it up on the screen for better.
It-
Well,
it's-
I think page 5 probably gives it to you, Buzz.
Am I right, Cameron?
Which,
Page 3 of the applicant's.
so the way it was
Report.
drawn is, yes, so the way it's depicted is a little bit off, but originally, it was originally platted, it was indeed to allow for those types of lots. It has since been replatted so that the property that's in the corner is actually the full, it crosses over that dotted hatch line.
But there's no,
But there's no actual single family on that part of the lot. It belongs to that single family house, that the lot belongs to that house, but there's no
But it's not-
dwellings on that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And we could go back to the aerial image.
Thank you.
So over that portion, you'll see a pool is up there.
Yeah.
It seems to me the variance is is reasonable, the variance request.
Thanks for the clarification. Anything else you would like to add?
No, thank you so much.
I'll open public hearing. Anyone for or against who would like to speak? Come forward.
Hi, good evening, members of the board. I'm Giorgio Antoniassi. I'm the architect for 123 Nomi. I just want to speak, sort of echo what Mr. Held just mentioned.
Just state your address.
Giorgio Antoniassi, 1049 Southwest 9th Court, Miami, Florida. So this is actually my first project in North Miami, so very excited. Hopefully we'll be doing a lot more here. Two things to mention. We are, I believe, the number one item to keep in mind is that we're not harming the surrounding properties in any way with our development. What I mean by that is, I think the size of our building is not taking anything away from that single-family residence. However, should we have to modify our building, it will greatly hinder our development, yet that corner property will more than likely be developed in the near future and we'll get to enjoy all the benefits of the underlying zoning. We take asking for a variance very seriously. We're a small shop. We don't enjoy coming to spend a lot of time attempting to push the boundaries. We're trying to do things as of right. However, I think in this particular case, what we're asking for is warranted in this case.
Just one question. Would
Sure.
this be rental or will they be condos?
Rental.
Madam Chair?
I will close public hearing.
Thank you.
Board discussion.
Well, I know the neighborhood well, and I think it'd be a welcome addition to the neighborhood. Yeah, I know with that neighborhood, I go there all the time, and first off, I think the design is really great, fits in well with the way North Miami is headed in design. And I think that it'll be a welcome change to the neighborhood and hopefully spur some continued renovations, because the neighborhood does need it for sure.
Mr. Shields?
Did we do any board disclosures for this particular item?
And Mr. Held? Did you,
I
do you
can't-
have
I
something
can't
to
remember.
disclose?
Oh, no, I do not. I just
do
can't. I
not
just can't remember whether or
Okay,
not we
well,
did.
feel free to disclose
for
now.
for compliance purposes,
Okay.
of course.
I heard that this was coming at another meeting, but I had no direct contact.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, my quick thoughts are this. I mean, I agree with everything that Mike just said. I think this is such a welcome addition, potentially to this neighborhood, particularly the design and the use and multifamily in this area. To Mr. Held's comment, my opinion is that number one could be flipped from no to yes, and that there are special conditions or circumstances that may be peculiar to this particular site. My belief on that, based off of staff's analysis, is that this is a transitional area in which multifamily uses are allowed, but you obviously have in Lot 7, Block 1, a single-family property diagonally adjacent to the property that is essentially what's triggering the 25-foot setback, which otherwise, if that were not there, we would not be having this variance discussion here today. And I think it's also quite likely, just given development trends in that part of the city, that you know,
Will not be a
that
single family.
it may become multifamily at some point, or condos. I think it would be telling if the owner of that particular home was here today protesting, of which I'm sure they may or may not have heard of this meeting, but they're not currently present. And so we obviously don't have that opinion here to be heard. But my opinion is, I believe that we've got a pretty good case to flip that particular item from no to yes, which would make this a a 4 yes out of 6,
Mhm.
which I believe would give us a pretty good case to,
Right.
to vote in
And
favor.
and I think it's a nice structure and design,
Mhm.
but it's not something that is really impinging on the surrounding neighborhood. So, it's not like a 20-story, building with all the parking nightmares that go with that. So, I think it's gonna be a nice addition to the neighborhood, and hopefully spur some changes, because that neighborhood is definitely, due for some good changes in the future.
And I think with that said, I mean, I'm definitely in favor of this project and us trying to figure out a way, maybe with that idea just mentioned or something else to push forward. I will say though, I think we may run into some issues on, at least when I see of the fencing on the rendering, on the opacity. Just want to get ahead of that, because I know in the last 4 years,
Yes.
that's been a topic of discussion and concern on this board.
Yes.
But other than that, I'd love to try to figure it out. I think we've got a pretty good basis here, in my opinion.
And I hear what you're saying, Mr. Shields, in the rendering, in terms of the fence, and I know there's so subject here, but I don't think those, well, we'll cross the bridge when we get there, but I don't think those fit necessarily. What works for private,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily work for
And when they
multifamily.
build the fence, they're gonna have to go by code anyway.
Of
Uh,
course, and
but-
they may very well end up here again.
Well,
A year
isn't the
So
issue
just a
usually,
question to the architect. Sure. It's actually 3 stories of living space and then 1 story of parking, correct?
That's right. We only have parking on the ground level and then
Alright.
3 levels of residential
Right.
and
Alright.
some.
Okay, any other discussion?
Can I make a motion?
Go ahead, Mr.
I'd like to-
McDermott.
Can I add something real, just a question for
Go
clarification?
ahead.
Cameron, would you happen to know the number of stories for the surrounding properties, the multifamily properties?
Give me one moment.
I think the one to
There.
the north is
A
5
couple-
stories. No, the one right on 125th Street
This
is
is
just
one.
to the north.
I don't have the information for the multifamily to back, but I do have the information for to the north is 1 story, to the south is 1 story, the diagonal, that single-family property in question is 2, but the multifamily that's north of that single family, I don't have that information.
I think it's right
There's
on
a
one,
couple
it
on
faces right on
125th.
125th. I
It's
think it's
not too
5.
far from President Supermarket,
Yeah,
it's
right.
an orange
Right.
Yeah.
building. I think it's 4, but it might be 5.
I think it's 5.
North, the one across to the west is 4 stories.
4? Okay.
And my other question for Cameron, how long ago was this noticed? Was it like just the 10-day minimum, or did surrounding property owners have ample time to get the notice?
Whether they received ample time, I can't respond, but they have received the minimum 10 days. And this item, sorry, no, this one was item, sorry, I thought this one's twice. No, they've received their 10 days. And there was a sign posted on the property.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Mr. McDermott, you had
Yes.
a.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the project, with staff conditions.
Motion made by Mr. McDermott. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Shields. Roll call?
Chairwoman Philippe,
Yes.
Vice Chair McDermott,
Yes.
Commissioner Shields,
Yes.
Commissioner Pierre-Louis,
Yes.
and Commissioner Monestein.
Yes.
The motion passes with a unanimous vote of 5-0.
Good luck.
Thank you very
Welcome
much.
to
Have a great
Congratulations.
evening.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any old business? New business?
Just wanted to update everyone that the tablets have come in, and by the time you meet again, you will be using tablets. That's it.
Oh, we got tablets?
I got the tablets.
Huh.
Just
Instead of all the paper stuff, so you just use the tablet in lieu of paper.
Yeah.
Instead, in the future, instead of the agenda sitting on your desk, there
It
will
will
be a tablet
right
loaded
there.
up with the information.
Okay.
All you have to do is just scroll.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Although I
We
like
saved the
color.
trees.
We're saving the trees, yes.
We need, okay, new business, besides that,
What's our next
can we
meeting
get a
date?
list of, updated list of all our members?
Yes, that has been in the works for
Okay.
some time now.
Thank you.
When is
You
our-
had something to
When's
say?
our next meeting date?
Oh, our next meeting date should be?
June 21st.
June 21st, 2022.
Yeah, June 21st. Already noted, Ms.
Okay.
Pierre-Louis will be out of town. I will be there,
Okay.
Me too.
although I will be out of town, but I'll be back in time. I'm back on the 19th.
We endeavor to have quorum.
No. So we need to make sure that Mr. Mondesir is here. Otherwise, we won't have a quorum,
Kicking and screaming.
okay? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go Heat.
All right, go Heat.